What's up, Miami Dolphins fans? My name is Jim Greasehaber. Call me Grease. Welcome to your Miami Dolphins squad show. And I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to have his biggest game of the season by far this week against the New York Jets.
I'm Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, and I think the Miami Dolphins need to run the dang tar out of the football on Monday Night Football.
Hi, I'm Jessica, former Dolphin, and I am so excited for Monday Night Football.
Phins up. It's the Dolphin Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphin Squad Show starts now.
All right, Fin fans, happy to have you here on the Dolphin Squad Show. A big week for us. Jim Greasehaber, call me Grease. We got Z, Jeff Skanina, and Locked On Dolphins, Kyle Krabs, the ups, the downs, the ins, the outs. You want to prep for this show, just watch Kyle all week, and that's the secret sauce right there. But a big week for the Miami Dolphins, guys. We're going to get into that in just a minute. But first, I want to remind you that we are here after every game live with a 1-hour show now, and we are here in the middle of the week as well, every single week on Wednesdays. The Sunday night show or Monday night this week, Thursday night last week, will be immediate post-game reaction turning into the following game. The midweek show is going to be looking back with final thoughts, and you can see it on the rundown there. We're going to talk about some news, some notes, things that Kyle goes through day in, day out, and then get some previews with the Jets and some final thoughts. So some great things happening with the Dolphins in that game against the Bills that did not lead to a win, guys. But man, oh man, it's exciting. So we're here both those times, and we're on YouTube, and we are on as well as YouTube. We're on wherever you get your audio version of your podcast, which is Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify. And then, of course, we're on Roku as well. So we are spreading everywhere on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I think you might want to use those bets on the Dolphins this week, Z. I loved what I saw last week. The Bills are a great team. I know Oliver was out, and that was a big part of the success running the ball. I agree with Kyle. They have to base things out of the run, right? I think that is first and foremost. But I do believe that sets Tua up for the only real shot he has at great success right now in this offense and with this team.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, we got to set the running game early and often, so we can move the sticks, manageable more third downs, we come off that running game, and then we get into our play action, and that's where Tua makes his money.
Yeah, Kyle, I know that you love, look, with Gordon and what he's doing now, and obviously the big playability and coming out of the backfield pass catching of Achane, that backfield is probably the strength of the offense right now.
Yeah, I think you can look at pretty much every basic and then advanced metric of success for offensive football. And the Dolphins don't rank well in all of them, with the exception of one thing, and that is non-quarterback rushes from an EPA, which is expected points added perspective. And that's a historical reference, right? Because yards per carry tells one picture, but you could be running for 7-8 yards in the fourth quarter, losing by 3 touchdowns, and it's not the same value as running for 6 yards on 3rd and 4 when you're trying to ice the game in the final 4 minutes. So EPA is a measure that's designed to contextualize your game situation based on down and distance and scoreboard and all those things. The Dolphins on non-quarterback design rushes are 6th in the NFL in EPA per rush. That's the one area that they've had success, and that contextualizes the fact that they've been down on the scoreboard for the first 2 games that they played early in the first quarter in both of those games. So it's an interesting matchup where we're going to get into the Jets and what they do well and the matchups there. But that's the thing that Mike McDaniel's background is rooted in. It's the thing that you made your personnel moves to try to be better at. And it's the thing that's working. And when you've got a quarterback that's confidence doesn't look like it's really vibing right now, I think that's a must-have non-starter for me when you're talking about what a recipe for success looks like to build off of what you did last week in Buffalo.
And what you did against New England. They had, and even against the Colts, it was just like Z and I had talked about this when we first started getting ready to do the show. They ran into that buzzsaw in Indy and they turned the ball over so many times early, but they have had a lot of drives, Z, this year that have been impressive. They have taken the air out of the football. They have run it and they have picked up. In that Buffalo game, they had several drives where they're picking up big first downs, big first downs. Tua picked one up running and he slid, big throws. The thing about this offense, though, they're picking up the first downs. They're going on longer drives, but they're just not able to hit the big play. And as I'm watching Tua, Z, and you tell me as a D lineman, you love sacking that quarterback, right? He holds the ball a little bit. The protection hasn't been great, but he cannot throw the ball. I don't know. We'll get to this after your thoughts with Kyle about why Tua can't throw the ball downfield anymore, because I was looking at some film from a couple of years back, and he was doing it very well, but not anymore. So when defenses bunch up like that, Z, making it harder to run the ball and you can't throw it deep, what can you do?
Well, you'll probably see more of the screen game come out. You saw a little bit last week, where he was dumping off into the flat to his checkdowns, but he just got to do it faster. He's got to get his reads in, and then he's got to know where his outlet is and hit it faster so that guy has an opportunity to make some plays. It seemed like last week he checked it out there, and then the defender was there, for a tackle for a loss or, 1 or 2 yard gain. If he gets it out there early enough, I think that guy has a chance to make some plays, whoever it is, a running back, wide receiver, or tight end.
Why can't he throw it deep anymore, Kyle? Is that something that it's just time, injuries? I don't understand why all of a sudden he just can't throw it. It's like when Chuck Knobloch couldn't throw it to first base anymore.
Yeah, it's I think you have some compounding variables that are complicating this, and the Dolphins have pointed to too high shells and how that gets them pre-snap out of those looks. And I understand that, but everybody's dealing with too high shells. It's not like this was an invention created to combat the Dolphins 22 and 23 offense, right? Like everybody been playing cover 2 for forever as it pertains to the game of football. I do think what's been interesting after the week 3 loss is I've heard multiple NFL insiders who work for the major networks refer to Mike McDaniel is calling an offense to protect his quarterback, to ensure his quarterback doesn't get hit. So that means we're not calling some longer shot plays down the field. I don't know how much I buy it, though, because they dial up these shots. They do max protect and 2-man route combinations, and you've seen it. The consistency hitting and driving the throws hasn't been there. So some of that is the timing of the drop versus the timing of the break, because he's an anticipation thrower. He's not a guy that's going to see it late and rip the ball into the window. So if he can't get it up and down within the timing of his drop in the route, I think that's a barrier. I think you've seen some misses in that regard. I think his feet aren't really married to being tethered into the ground to help him drive throws, because he doesn't have a lot of extra margin for error with his arm strength. So I think you have quarterback elements. I think you got play design elements. I think you got defensive scheme and how they've decided they want to play you elements. And, if teams are going to continue to play in too high shells, that's why I go back to the opening statement is just, okay, run the ball 30 times. Just if teams are going to give you outbreakers outside the numbers, which the Bills did all game long on Thursday night, and they're going to give you 6-man box counts or 6.5-man boxes because that safety's maybe in the box or maybe that nickel's creeping in, but maybe he's not, keep taking it. And Mike McDaniel's talked again and again and again about overplay. And if teams are going to overplay us to take something away, we have to be able to punish them and do that repeatedly. Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? If you're going to change teams' minds on how they have to play you and how you physically line up and play football has to continue to change, and then it will come in time.
And the time that they don't have. Mike McDaniel doesn't have that time. Tua doesn't have that time. Grier definitely doesn't have that time. And the fans don't want to hear about that time, Kyle. You hear this more than anybody day in and day out. And I know that you can speak on this better than any of us. But Z, you've been in that locker room too. And you faced that when Wannstedt was coaching and the fans were all riled up and Jay Fiedler's going back to pass, quack, 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 looked like a Tua deep ball. And we're just spoiled after Marino. And the thoughts that I have are, oh my God, Dan Marino with this offense. And we're going to get to whose seat is the hottest. And we're going to get to moves they could make. Like, should they trade Tyreek Hill off the 100-yard game, which they're not doing. And he's been a little bit at times of a malcontent. Sometimes he says the right thing. He's mercurial. He's a receiver. It goes with the position. Waddle finally getting involved. They have weapons all over the field, man. And McDaniel is McGenius, right? So I thought he did a much better job calling plays. I thought that they kept the Bills off balance a lot in that game. But Kyle, just to your point, man, the fan base is riled up. They don't have the time for this to gel. It was supposed to be here with all these weapons and all this money they spent and this coach they had and coming off that 23 season. So what do you say? And I know what you say day in and day out, but here today, what do you say to fans who have no patience left? I mean, you're talking like it's approaching. It's not quite Red Sox Cubs level curse yet, but the curse of Shula is real, man. I don't know if it's a curse or not, but it's literally something that no matter what they seem to do, bringing in new coaches, new coordinators, new players, the result always seems to be the same until you had a lot of hope a couple of years ago. And then coming off of that, ever since Tyreek was face down on the pavement, the whole thing just went off a cliff.
Yeah, I think what I would say is I think everybody can look at and recognize that this current situation that you're in is untenable. And I think this collective group, you made the decision to bring everybody back. You brought back Chris Grier. You brought back Mike McDaniel. You added, there was only a handful of changes to the coaching staff. There's a special teams coordinator change. Wes Welker's out at wide receiver. They get a little bit more of a hard-nosed guy, and Robert Prince in there to coach the wide receiver room and help you in that regard. They bring in Bobby Slowick and his influence to kind of help the passing game. They didn't make the changes last year, and it was through the lens, in my belief, of, look, we got to get this organization aligned. We know some things that need to be done, whether we make changes or not make changes. There's a lot of guaranteed money that's invested in the people that are here. You guys got to figure it out, right? And now they're getting that time on task to figure it out, and they better start figuring it out fast, or the buzz and the heat is only going to continue to get more intense.
Z, the defense has been under the microscope this year, hasn't been good. So I know it's hard as a defensive player to point fingers at a quarterback turning the ball over when your stuff's not happening the right way. How important is it and how hard is it not to turn against one another inside that locker room? That's not easy, is it, on some teams?
Not at all, because it happens, I mean, you got the fans, with the banners and their T-shirts about fire this guy, fire that guy. We all see it as players. It's not like we're in a bubble. We see it and we feel it. And at the end of the day, though, this defense is kind of makeshift right now with all the injuries, especially in the back half. And it doesn't help. In a passing league, if we're not getting pressure on the quarterback right away, they're getting picked apart because they're still learning their positions. Some of them have just been there a few weeks, and that hurts. You can say what you want. You want to fire this guy or fire that guy, but this team's had some injuries on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, that ain't coaching. That's injuries that you can't do anything about that sometimes, right?
I know every team has it. It's just that, it hit us hard right away and multiple, and it wasn't like just one guy. It was a bunch of guys, and now we're trying to makeshift it back. And, and once they get to play with each other for a while, it'd be a lot better.
And to me, Kyle, it's the dumb mistakes. I mean, like you said, you've said it many times about Zach Sealer, roughing, not running into, roughing. I mean, it's not that important to get a block punt there when your offense is playing well, and he's got to know that, right? And there's no excuse for Sealer doing that. And then Tua with the turnovers, that's because he's played really well at times, and the turnovers have killed that. And they're bad turnovers, Kyle. They're bad turnovers. Things like not looking a linebacker off. Those are things we haven't seen much from Tua. We know the limitations, but we haven't seen the mental mistakes, have we, like he's been making? I just think it's getting worse.
Yeah, that's been the biggest surprise for me is, before the season, I said, if you guarantee me that the Dolphins had their starting quarterback based on what his strengths are, and he's an unorthodox quarterback in a lot of ways because his strengths aren't kind of the hallmark things that are very apparent when you turn on the film. And I've likened it to like a vision cone with the old school Madden, right? And like you could see a certain portion of the field and throw to the eligibles in that space. But Tua, historically, during his first 5 seasons in Miami, he's seen a lot of the field at once and felt space develop based on coverage rotation really well to allow him to make quick snap decisions within that first 2 seconds. What we've seen this year, in my opinion, is you haven't seen the same confidence in where that leverage is accessible, and he's not seeing it as cleanly all at once. And as a result, he's holding the ball better. And that's part of, for me, hearing the speculation from insiders about what kind of concepts you're calling and how you're trying to run your offense to protect the quarterback. There's been some big shifts in this Dolphins offense and the structure of it. I mean, when Mike McDaniel first got to Miami, they were under center close to 40% of the time. I think they've been in the shotgun or pistol the last 3 years, pushing 80%. Well, their play action rate is down to 18% this year through 3 weeks. It was 45% 2 years ago.
That's unbelievable.
So is that, I want to have him in the gun without the run action to turn his eyes away from the defense so he can identify pressure faster? And if the answer to that question is yes, well, then why is his time to throw up? He's holding the ball longer this year than he's ever held the ball under Mike McDaniel. His outside of structure plays, he's averaging 4.5 seconds holding the ball. Last year, his outside of structure stuff outside the pocket was almost 3.5 seconds. So he's holding the ball an extra second longer per attempt that comes outside the pocket. So it all the pieces just don't add up. And that to me, I can't say, well, they're calling it because of this, or he's not doing that. It's very hard jigsaw puzzle to put together. And that's from my perspective when I'm taking inventory on assignment of responsibility of things that need to get better. When it's messy like that, that's when it feels really untenable. And it's like, we might just have to like plant a new tree here and start over.
Well, we know that the starting quarterback has lost a lot of the fan base. Has he lost any or all of the locker room? We're going to talk about that on the other side. Whose seat is the hottest? Is it Tua? Is it Mike McDaniel? Is it Grier? Is it Tyreek Hill? Whose seat is the hottest? The defense right now as well. But the injuries have been a big part of that. We're going to pick that up on the other side. This is your Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Grease. That's Jeff Scanina. Call him Z. All the way over there on your right. And Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins, in the middle. The hot seat convo on the other side. Lee Serling from Locked On Bets is going to come on a little bit later in the show and break down the odds. And we're going to talk about the Jets matchup. So many things coming your way. Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, and I get a chance to tell you about FanDuel, guys. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. That's right. Right now, hey, it's your tomorrow because new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app, right? You can use FanDuel however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds on FanDuel. So that's something that really is exciting with FanDuel. All the different ways you can bet, whether you're watching your team or just keeping your eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays, Mondays, or whenever the Dolphins play. So are you ready? Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet with FanDuel on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Grease, that's Z, that's Kyle. It's your Dolphin Squad show. Let's get right into it, guys. Whose seat is the hottest? I'm saying, man, I'm going to lean more toward Mike McDaniel because fans always love to go for the coach's throat more than any player. It just seems to be ingrained. And so I think Mike McDaniel's seat is the hottest. Of course, Grier is hot as well, but the head coach is always squarely in the crosshair. So as much as Tua is, McDaniel is more in my mind.
So I think what's interesting about those two parties in particular is they both got contract extensions last year, right? Where Tua signs his very well-documented contract extension, but Mike McDaniel also signed a contract extension as well that has 2 years left on it after this season finishes. So that's for ownership as assuming you continue on the trajectory that you're on, right? Like, because they could start winning games. I said that on the show yesterday, went through the schedule and everyone's like, ain't no way they're winning 8-9 games. It's like, yeah, but I hear you, but they're not the only dumpster fire in the NFL right now through 3 weeks.
Could be
play a lot of those teams.
Could be 2-1 right now, Kyle.
It very easily could be.
Could be 2-1. Very
easily could be. And the schedule is soft the next month. It's really going to tell you a lot about exactly where this team's at in the next 4 weeks. I'm going to say Chris Grier, because Chris Grier has been the general manager by title since 2016, but he really fully took football operations controls once Mike Tannenbaum was elevated out to football operations back in 2019. And he's seen this build from start to finish. And you've heard multiple times, whether it's been from Chris Grier or from reports about what Stephen Ross's mentality is about the team. Chris Grier's quote was, "I'm not sure we're winning the right way." And that's why they made some of these transitions to younger players and moved away from certain players in the locker room, and the team culture comments that have been so well documented. There's one guy at the top that had the final say in every single transaction that breeded that. And it's Chris. And, with now Mike McDaniel's not Chris's first pick as a head coach. Chris Grier's the guy that was here as part of the decision to draft Tua Tagovailoa. Mike wasn't here for that. So I think the other guys can at least point to other elements and say, this is restricting me or that's restricting me. The guy at the top of the football operation for me is the guy who I think has to be under the most intense microscope right now.
Z, who do you say is on the hot seat the most? And just as a part B to kickstart the next part of the convo, man, as a player in that locker room, can you even think about these things? Because they're everywhere you look. Every time you go to the store, players tell me all the time, you can't even go get a sandwich when you're losing. When you're winning, they'll buy you everything, but you can't even go get one when you're losing.
There's a lot of truth to that. But you try to go to the second part first. You block it out. You have to. You can't control it. You only can control what you can control as a player. All the other stuff upstairs you can't control. You don't know what the owner's thinking. I mean, the owner could come back and say, I'm keeping both of them until next year. He's the one that cuts the check every week for everybody in the building. He's the only one that's not getting fired in that building. Everyone else is on a day-to-day, work leave, because that's how it is. Every day you go in, no matter who you are, you could get fired, except the owner. That's the only cat that's, the only person that can fire him is the other 32 owners. They've thrown one guy out, they'll throw out another guy if they have to. But that's the only people that can fire you, the other owners, as an owner. Who I think's on the hot seat, I think both of them are. I think they're in a love seat, I think both of them are sitting there.
Year and a half, right?
Love seat.
Yeah, that's just what it is. If one goes, the other's going to go, I think. You never know. They may get rid of, Chris first and, let Mike have one more year at it. But to me, they're in a love seat. And if they don't get the guys to play hard every week, then it's going to be faster than later. Yeah. That's the key is to get for Mike. That's the key to keep the guys, to keep that vision going for them to play hard and play good, sound football. I don't want to come out Monday night and see guys now pressing. I know it's week 4. We're 0-3 because now guys are going to start pressing. I think that's what happened with Zach when he went for that punt. He was pressing to make a play, and look what happens. You can't do that. Tua's holding on the ball because he's pressing to find somebody open downfield when it's not there. Just throw the check down. Let's go to the next play. So hopefully, Mike can get that message across this week for Monday night to show everybody my team's playing hard for me. They believe in the mission and go from there.
And Kyle, you said on your show, one of your shows this week, and you have a lot of great content up. Go back and check out the Locked On Dolphins shows and keep watching them with Kyle. He's the best in the business. He'll keep you informed on everything. And you guys know in the chat, I keep getting, and Z, you're getting a lot of love in the chat too as well, my buddy. But Kyle, you said this week that Stephen Ross probably won't make a move unless the fans hit him in the pocketbook. And I thought that was right on point, bro. Can you just expand on that? Because he's got a lot of reasons and millions of reasons to stick with this team as long as it looks good. But more importantly, as long as the fans are making him money, there's a lot of owners. And let's not forget, it's a business first. Yeah.
So the reports that came out, it usually always happens. You're the standalone game. You're the only show in town on Thursday night. And now everybody that's connected to somebody with a camera and a microphone that's on broadcast television has a report about your situation and your team. And all of them had the same universal sentiment that Stephen Ross wants to be patient because he likes Mike McDaniel and he doesn't want to make changes, right? He wants to let them see this process through because they did become a lot younger football team. They do have a lot of young pieces. They did turn over 51% of the roster versus last year. Like, those things can be true. I think that's something I wish we embraced more, is multiple things can be true at the same time.
Right.
So I acknowledge that. And it sounds like Stephen Ross recognizes this was never going to be flip the switch, hot start, we're off and running, we're going to win 11, 12 games this year, right? But the two things that universally was said was if the team quits on him, and that goes back to what Z just got done talking about, playing sound, fundamental, hard football with great effort and strain and buy in on what the game plan is on every single week. If they come out and they're jogging around on the backside of plays, if guys aren't chasing the ball on turnovers, if guys aren't blocking and straining on the backside, all that stuff. If that starts to melt down and you lose another primetime game, man, I think it could be scary hours for some folks in the building. But the other part of it was, if fans stop showing up and the fans en masse deliver a message to Stephen Ross, it could change the appetite of Ross, because this is a business. Everybody, this is a hobby for fans that sit down and for 3.5 hours and watch it. There's a bunch of people that make their living with this from a business, never mind the people that are the players and the coaches and the staff and the executives and all of it, right? And the minute that the bottom line gets influenced to a certain degree, you can like a guy as much as you want, but if the results on and off the field suddenly stop performing, I think that does change the conversation as far as your appetite to see things through.
Less than 5 minutes left, and then we have Lee Sterling coming on from Locked On Bets and Paramount Sports to break down the odds and talk about the Jets in the next segment. But before we go, I want to talk about Tua because his seat might be the hottest. I think you guys just convinced me to change my answer from Mike McDaniel to Tua because maybe they give McDaniel another year without Tua. And the fans, even in the chat right now, are clamoring to bench Tua because of the turnovers. And you look what you have behind him, and I'm not real sure that'd be a good move to make either. But as we wrap the segment, Z, I want to ask you, how hard is it to be a leader? How hard is it to come out and say something like, be tough, be firm, like Tua did earlier about Tyreek Hill before the season started? How difficult does that get to get guys to follow you when you're making that many mistakes and you're a big part of the reason why you keep losing?
I mean, it really is. Like, if you have a leader or so-called leader or whatever it is in your locker room, especially a captain that you voted for, and he's up there preaching about, hey, do this, we got to do that, and he's not following what he's saying, it's hard to follow those people. Now, I don't know what goes on in their locker room. I don't know anything, how the players feel about him or any of the leaders, on the team. But you have to practice what you preach, or, guys will see right through it and not follow you one bit. And then the chirping starts, and then the locker room's lost.
What about you, Kyle? You know a little bit more about the inside stuff with the way the players feel about Tua. What do you think?
I think if I'm looking at it from a business sense and I'm looking at it from a coaching sense, that is one of those point of no return type decisions in my mind. If you're talking about benching a team captain and the starting quarterback, especially off of 3 games, right? And whether you like that this has an influence on the conversation or not, his salary next year is guaranteed, and it's north of $50 million in cash, right? So with 31 games left on guarantees, like, I think you have a different conversation if this whole year plays out like what the first 3 weeks has, and you make like systematic football operation changes from the top down, new GM, new coach. Those guys come in and say, hey, we understand that there's guaranteed money here, but we want to go in a different direction. And there's sunk cost. It's not going to be the future of the position in Miami while we're here. I think that's a different conversation. And I think where you get to the point where I think it's digestible and tangible for me to embrace it's a realistic idea to sit Tua is if you get past the bye week, it's the last month of the season, and you've made some changes. You've decided to move on from Mike McDaniel. You've decided to move on from Chris Grier, and big changes are coming. It would probably at that point behoove you to see a Zach Wilson who was brought in with the intention of, hey, you see reclamation quarterbacks all across the league right now. Look at Daniel Jones in Indianapolis and Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay and Sam Darnold in Seattle, who's balling right now. He's got them scoring a ton of points in Seattle right now. There's a lot of examples of guys who have found their footing after going through the school of hard knocks once they've gotten into the league after getting drafted high. Is Zach Wilson one of those guys? I would have the appetite to find out if you told me the systematic changes are coming. I just think it's a conversation that for week 4 is in my mind, too early to have, personally.
That's Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. Jeff Skanina, former Dolphins player, and that was a good defense you were on when you were playing, Z. We're going to talk a lot about the defense as we look ahead to the New York Jets. On the other side, we're also going to be joined by Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets and Paramount Sports to break down the odds for the Dolphins Jets. And we know all's not lost. We know there have been a lot of glimpses. One thing I want to add before we go to break, and Kyle's got a spot for you, is that Tua hasn't had a tight end yet this year. And a quarterback like him really needs a good tight end. Jonnu was great last year. Darren Waller brought in. He really hasn't had anything in that position. So I want to give him a little bit of grace with regard to that. And Z, if you can just hit on that in maybe 15, 20 seconds, what your thoughts are. The tight end is so important in the NFL.
Yeah, just like we were talking about earlier about him checking the ball down. You have that tight end in the middle or somewhere around that, for his safety valve. That's what we need, and Waller's, is in the past has been a really great tight end. And if we get someone dynamic like that, healthy and out there, for Tua to use as, a false safe, we have a chance to move the ball better. That's for sure.
And Kyle, if you have a quick retort on that.
Yeah, I think my regret is, Julian Hill did have the 2-point conversion. He had Julian Hill on the interception that he threw against the Patriots in week 2. He had him on a delayed chip out of the backfield, and he could have moonwalked for a first down. He chose not to throw him the ball, right? My concern is, too, is a chemistry guy. So you have Darren Waller now coming in. you haven't thrown to Darren Waller at all. Like the practice reports every day. Waller's on the bike. Waller's doing this. Waller's doing that. You know what Waller's not doing? Catching passes from Tua. So that's where my concern is about the implementation. How early can he help you? And I don't know that answer. And I think that's why my expectations are probably a little tempered at this stage for how fast we'll see that value. But I agree with everything that's being said about the value of that position for this offense.
All right, that's Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. Jeff Scanina, call him Z, former Dolphins player, longtime player in the NFL and coach, taking the broadcasting route this year with us on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jim Grieshaber. Call me Grease. It's your Dolphins squad show. We are about halfway through. Still to come, Lee Sterling, Locked On Bets. We're going to break down the Jets, and we're going to give us we're going to give you our final. We'll give us our final thoughts. But we're going to give them to you too. It's going to be a lot of fun here on your Dolphins squad show. The number's big right now, so make sure you hit that sub. Come on in with the questions if you can. The chat's more of an entertainment for all of you together right now. It's moving so fast for us. And don't forget, we're free on YouTube. We're free on Roku and anywhere you get the audio version of your podcast. And we're going to take a quick break. Come right back. Kyle is going to tell you about our friends at Mazda.
Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat each and every detail. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You could feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like all of the players in the NFL, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
All right. That's Kyle Krabs, Jim Grieshaber, call me Grease, Jeff Scanina, your Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, the 3 losses to start the season. Indianapolis, that loss looks a little better now. They're undefeated. They're killing Daniel Jones. Wow. I mean, if I'm the Giants, wow. And then they're already benching Russell Wilson and bringing in the rookie Jackson Dart. So, like you said, Kyle, to your point, a change of scenery in the NFL can sometimes just extend a career, and a guy can be great again, whether it's Jones, whether it's Baker Mayfield and winning games with the Bucs. Those are 2 of the glaring examples. So I know nobody wants to give up on Tua, right? I know nobody wants to give up on Tua, but a big division game against the Jets, you have to win those division games. They could not lose that Patriots game, and they did. But coming into this week, guys, they cannot lose. They cannot lose this game against the Jets. They're not a good team at all. It's a division game. And I'm going to go even further, Z, and say if I'm in that locker room right now, I'm thinking we're not just winning this game. We're making a statement, and we're going to stomp these fools.
Oh, of course. It's Monday night. You got to understand. So, well, there's 2 games nowadays, but back in the old days, there was always 1 game on Monday night, and everybody watched it. All your peers, all the coaches, all the fans, everybody watched it. And you wanted to show up, and no matter who you're playing, you wanted to really thump them, you know? So, yeah, they're talking about it. It's a division game. You know, it's like I said, we're evenly matched teams. We're both like in the doghouse now, you know, trying to work our way out of it. And, you know, it's time to show what, you know, the Dolphins are really about.
Kyle, your thoughts on that real quick before we bring on Lee?
Yeah, I think the Jets have some interesting matchups as we get into that element of this game. And obviously the big question for them is Justin Fields didn't play last week with concussion protocol, and Tyrod Taylor came in at quarterback, and the Jets had almost a miraculous comeback against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It would have been the second time in franchise history that the Jets came back from 17 or more points down in the fourth quarter. The first, of course, was the Monday Night Miracle when the Dolphins blew a 30-7 lead in 2000. And so the Dolphins almost got let off the hook in the Jets record books with this blocked field goal that the Jets had to take a lead late against Tampa Bay, but Baker Mayfield took them down the field, won the game. I think it'll be really interesting to kind of look at the trench play on both sides, because that's where the Jets, they have a lot of young talent. Now they were a little banged up on the defensive line this past week with Jermaine Johnson was out. I'm eager to get that test for Miami's young players versus the Jets' young players. And then the biggest question as we get into the matchups is Tyrod Taylor versus Justin Fields. Who do we see? Because I think that greatly changes the math of what their game plans have to look like for success.
But either way, after Josh Allen, that's going to feel like Christmas Day after playing him. Man, all right. Well, we are joined by, this is historic. He's our first guest on the show, guys. This is episode number 2, Dolphin Squad Show. Big moves being made all across the landscape of the Locked On Podcast Network. And a guy who was instrumental in helping me get here, as well as Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, a big Miami sports guy, the top handicapper at Paramount Sports. And, of course, Locked On Bets, our guy, Lee Sterling. What's up, Lee?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good to have you. Good. I just want to ask you, you're a Miami guy. Before we get into your expertise on the odds side, you're a big Dolphin fan, season ticket holder to all the Miami teams, and you've been suffering as much as anybody, man. We've been talking about, and I want to get your thoughts. Last segment, we asked whose seat is the hottest. Is it Mike McDaniel? Is it Grier? Is it Tua? And then as we were talking, you could throw Stephen Ross in there. Who do you think?
I think it's Grier and also McDaniel. I think they're almost tied at the hip. The coach usually goes first, but I think both will go if they're fired. And I can't see them firing McDaniel and then holding on to Grier for a while. I think they'd make the move and send both of them on their way. It's just frustrating. I don't know if you guys know my history. I listen to Kyle here in Miami QAM when he's on as a guest. So my family was original 1966 season ticket holders. So I've been going to games since I was 3 years old and got probably 50, 60 programs, even from the 66 season through the glory years through like 74 when, the run ended with Zonka, Kick, and Warfield going to the WFL. But it is frustrating because they should be much better. And I'm a handicapper. I'm a former college player. I do this. I look at certain, every team. I don't look at one team, their needs, and that's all. They should have identified from day one Justin Herbert was better than Tua. I came on many shows. I was also quoted, I think, in the newspaper with Barry Jackson. I said, Justin Herbert's their guy. Bigger, faster, stronger, better arm, and less injured. And it wasn't that hard. The only knock I heard on Justin Herbert at the time was that, he wasn't a leader, wasn't as vocal. Really? That's it? That's all you can find? Didn't play in a real wide open offense like Tua or more of a wide open offense, but clearly he was better. And then, the following year, they could have had, they could have had Chase. And you have a chance to get Jamar Chase, and nothing's wrong with Jalen Waddle. He's a fine number 2. But Jamar Chase is arguably the best receiver in the NFL. And how can they not see it? You're looking at tape and you're looking, you're going to games live. If I can see it, and this is not what I do, just looking for my team. If I can see it, they should be able to see it. And obviously Chris Grier is, I think, most to blame. And then obviously McDaniel, I wouldn't say it was a one-hit wonder, but they figured him out after a year. These coaches aren't dumb. They will hand over. If they can't figure it out, they'll hand it to their staff, and they'll say in the offseason, this is what this team does. I'm watching plays, and I can tell sometimes before the play is called, if I've seen the team enough, what they're calling. So if I can figure it out, they should be able to figure it out.
Kyle, Z, which one of you guys wants to go next?
I hear you. That's how it is. Like you said about calling out plays. That's why I don't watch a lot of football, because when you're in there so long, studying these guys, you know exactly what's going to happen. A, by the formation, A, by the motion, and what the quarterback's saying. I was sitting there on Sunday with my daughter watching games, and she's like, "Oh, they said that." I go, "Yeah, this is the play." After I heard it 3-4 times, I know exactly what the play is. Lucky Ringo, where the line's going. All these things are being said, and it's the same thing every week. So they're getting figured out. And if it's year after year after year, and if you're not changing and tweaking things, teams pick up on it. Things never change. It's no different. We played Peyton Manning way back in the day. We had a whole list of all his checks. Now, he was smart enough to change them and smart enough to say them, and it kept the original play, and you're playing a screen when it's a freaking draw, and he's laughing at you. Because he knows, it's a chess match, even with the players against each other.
And then on top of that, guys, we knew going into this season, they had no cornerbacks. And I'm looking at rosters. Now, I can't tell you I don't see enough of the 5th, 6th, 7th cornerbacks on rosters, but I can tell you the first 4. I don't know if any of these cornerbacks would be in the top 4 on any team. Maybe 1 or 2, but certainly not starters. They knew that. And obviously you don't want to pay 15, 20 million for a guy, but you're not going to find a guy in the scrap heap. So that, tight end, and then also offensive line. I mean, those were the 3 biggest deficiencies, and they didn't do anything to help out any of those positions.
I think the thing that compounds that too is when the decision was made at the end of last year to bring everybody back, and then what's come out in comments afterwards is, oh, we had to kind of change the way we went about building a team. That means you have to take your lumps as you're getting rid of salaries like Jalen Ramsey's salary. So you could tell they were operating kind of with a conscious budget. Not to say that the checkbook was totally closed or anything like that, because they did sign James Daniels to the 3-year, $24 million contract at guard. He made it three plays and had the pec injury, so now he's on injured reserve. But I think that further compounded, and that to me goes back to why, for me, Chris Grier seat is the hottest, is if you drafted with volume. You're not going to hit every draft pick, but if you made draft picks at some teams are drafting 10, 12 players a year in the draft, and the Dolphins drafted 8 players in 2 seasons, and one of them was inside the top 100 picks. Like you got the starry eyes for the big names with the big contracts, and as you got to move away from those players, you don't have the players in the pipeline that you've developed, and even if you're hitting on an average rate, you'd at least have less holes. You'd have guys that are capable of stepping in. So this is not just a 2025 offseason problem for me. This goes back to the root of the problem with how they've assembled the roster going back to 22, when they shipped out all their draft picks, and then they had 2 more top 100 picks that they got stripped on because they were tampering with players across the league.
All right. You also have 2 small receivers. If you have a small quarterback, you need someone it can't be your 3rd or 4th. You need someone, one of those 2 guys has got to be a guy that can go up and make plays. And whether it's on the sideline, it's in the red zone. I mean, Hill can do it somewhat and Waddle can, with their speed, but you need different skill sets. So they just don't get it. And I think that's what's frustrating, even people who aren't experts, who aren't ex-players like Jeff. Someone like Kyle who studies it, you, Grease, and me. So if the layperson, someone who's buying tickets in the upper deck, and those are your real fans, or people who go to the sports bar every week, if they can figure it out and you can't figure it out, that's a real problem.
You overthink, just like when I bet. I'm undefeated when I don't put money down, Lee, and then you put the money down, you start outthinking yourself, and I think that happens in the NFL. But they have made historically bad personnel decisions. This is not unique to Grier. I mean, Marino fell to them. If we're being real, who knows who they would have picked if they were in one of the slots of the teams above them that picked all those other guys. And then, of course, Drew Brees, Dante Culpepper, Tua, Justin Herbert, and hindsight always being 2020. It is what it is. But guys, we got to get to this week's game with Lee. The New York Jets coming in on Monday night. The world's going to be watching. The Jets are bad. Their quarterback position is going to be a nightmare for them to try to scheme around to find a way to win this game. This looks like a recipe for the Dolphins to get a lot better really quick, especially the defense this week. But the spread that I'm seeing right here, I'm looking at right now, Dolphins -2.5 is what I'm seeing, Lee. -2.5 for this matchup against the Jets.
I'm going to be honest. This game could come down to the last possession. If I had to bet on it, it's going to be one team or the other trailing with the ball with 2 minutes to go and a chance to win the game. And it's going to come down to, can you make a play? I think Kyle and Jeff are laughing. I mean, but that's smiling. That's probably what it's going to be. 2 very, I'm going to be nice and kind of say mediocre teams. It's going to come down to matchups. Can they stop Garrett Wilson? I do believe, it's early in the week. We don't know who's going to play. There's 8 players listed as questionable for the Jets and 10 for the Dolphins. Most of them will probably play, but I expect we'll see Justin Fields. I do think that his dual strike capability, running and throwing, is a problem. So, you get someone out there, who let's say Carson Wentz. You don't have to worry about him running the football, really. He might run the ball twice for 10 or 12 yards. Justin Fields is a weapon. He can run, take off for 30, 40 yards. I think that's a problem. I think covering Wilson, I don't know if we have that guy. I don't see it on the roster. And maybe Breece Hall did not have a big game. I look a lot of times at certain big-time players. He's a problem. And usually players, after they have a bad game, good ones, they come back and have big games. So I think those are the three guys you got to look out for. I mean, Mason Taylor's been good this year, nice addition, but I don't think he's going to be the difference in the game. And, can Miami finish some of these drives? They move the ball, but they don't have the ball for very long, and their defense is on the field. If I have two teams that are very similar and I'm getting 2.5 points, I'm probably not going to bet the game, but if I had to pick a side, I would take the 2.5, 3 points. And if it goes to 3, you definitely want to jump on the Jets. I could see this game being something like 17-16 Dolphins or Jets. I don't know who's going to win, but I'll take the 2.5. I'm hoping the Dolphins do, though.
Yeah, you're going under, Lee. It's 44.5, so you're going way under.
So, I mean, it's low for a reason. Usually these NFL teams can score now. The average total is like 46.5. So they're giving you a reason. Anything could happen. The reason I don't bet a whole lot of totals is one punt block for a touchdown, one return like last week. You get a punt return and then a kickoff return. I can't remember the last time. I think they said that had been like 20, 30 years since that had happened. And of course, it happens in the Dolphins game. So one crazy play can determine, especially at a low total, whether you're going to win or lose. So not a game I'm personally playing, but I'd take the 2.5 points in the Jets and hold my nose.
All right. That's Lee Sterling, Locked On Bets, Paramount Sports, Dolphins, Jets, Monday Night Football, -2.5 for Miami, -156 on the money line, 44.5 the total. And Lee, Locked On Bets on the Locked On Podcast Network. I know that they can find your show on YouTube and, of course, right here, anywhere on the network where you get your podcast. But tell people where they can find you and they can actually lay some lumber down with you.
Yeah, so Locked On Bets is back. We were doing it for 3.5 years. I was doing it with Q, Locked On Raiders, and got Kevin Rogers, K-Rog, who's from Miami. A lot of people know the name, and Kevin is skilled. Who's a Vegas insider. So Monday through Friday, it's up on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and usually about 25 minutes. We're going to give out 4 or 5 selections. Obviously, football heavy, baseball playoffs coming up, UFC, hockey, and basketball right around the corner. So if they want to check us out, just type in Locked On Bets, and we'd appreciate it if you subscribe and like. And hopefully we have more winning bets than losers. We usually do. So I'm the owner of Paramount Sports. I've been doing this now 32 years. I think I have a pretty good handle. I'm not going to win every game or every week, but I'm going to have, in the long run, more winners than losers. So ParamountSports.com or Locked On Bets is where you can find me.
All right. Thank you, Lee. Love you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Lee.
All right. Lee Sterling, Locked On Bets. What a great, just to have him here on the network, but on the show. And I didn't know, I've been friends with Lee for over 20 years, and I didn't know that his family were original Dolphins season ticket holders. That's a lot of suffering over the years, but a lot of winning for a long time too, when the Dolphins were a premier franchise in the National Football League. It's still a premier franchise, but just the record hasn't been in the playoffs and all that, right? It's still a premier franchise, worth a ton of money. The sizzle is there. Everybody loves the Dolphins, know them worldwide, nationwide for sure. So I want to make sure I clarify that. It's Grease, Z, and Kyle, Dolphin Squad Show. Thanks again to Lee Sterling, and we're going to keep it right here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a spot for the audio people to put a break in for us, but this is your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And guys, as we move forward and wrap it up on this episode of the show, great insight from Lee Sterling, but we need to get into the Jets a little bit more. The Miami Dolphins coming in at 0-3 against this New York Jets team, 0-3. And just take comfort, Z, right? As a player in the Dolphins locker room, that heat is hot. But it is nowhere near the heat the Jets players, front office, and coaches are getting in that New York media market at 0-3. So two teams that are really feeling the heat, Z. Two teams that really came into the season I think, expecting different things. I think the Jets knew it was a rebuild. I think the Dolphins had higher expectations. But end of the day, they're both 0-3. They find themselves here. And as I'm a Dolphins player right now, I know we've done well. We've had some good drives. We've had some I think we're way better than the Jets. My mindset is we're much better than this team. I actually disagree with Lee. I think the Dolphins are going to come out and smoke them. I think that they're going to come out and play with fire, passion, and intensity that we saw in Buffalo. They're not going to be facing Josh Allen in that Bills offense.
No, they're not. But I think, again, Monday night, there's always more oomph when it's Monday night, like I said earlier. I think that, it's going to come down to what our defense does. Okay. Well, if it's Fields, like, Lee was saying, he can run around. I've faced him a couple times as a coach. That dude can extend plays with his legs. He is a threat that way, as Josh is with his legs. Now, he's not a great as passer as Josh is, but the guy can still heave the ball a long way. He's going to make plays with his legs. We got to watch out for that. But, I think our players, if we can go out, especially on defense, and get some stops early and get some confidence early, and be able to stop their running game, and get after the quarterback, and take advantage of some of their O-linemen with the D-line, I think we got a real good chance. And then on offense, we just can't turn the ball over. That's the key against this defense. They have some stout dudes up front, and if we can block them, and give Tua some time and let Tua make some quick decisions, I think we got a real good chance to, score a lot of points and not, get scored on.
Yeah, we could be having a much different conversation this time next week, Kyle.
Yeah, I think the keys for me, Z talked about turning the ball over. Neither one of these defenses has forced a single takeaway in 3 games. They are 2 of 3 teams in the NFL that have not forced a turnover in the first 3 games. The only other team is the Washington Commanders. The other thing that stands out about both these defenses to me, they are 1 and 2 in percentage of defensive drives that end in scores. It's 66% for the Dolphins. 2/3 of their possessions defensively have ended in points for the opposing team. The Jets are second, and it's 55%. So both of these teams, more than half the time when opponents touch the ball, they're getting points out of it. So I think that's what's interesting to me about the low game total as far as the points is these teams have been giving up points in bunches. These teams have not been stealing possessions from the opponent. And I think maybe you look at the Dolphins and their success running the ball and the Jets and what that offensive line is capable of being. Obviously, Elijah Vera Tucker's down for them, but they got a really promising right tackle in Armand Membu, and Olu Fashanu can create movement and displacement at the point of attack. John Simpson at left guard's a nice power player that I think is going to challenge the young guys that the Dolphins have. And Zach Sealer's not done well with power in the first 3 weeks. So there's some matchups there where maybe the argument is, hey, both teams are going to possess and have running clock because they're going to have success moving the ball. So maybe that is what is facilitating, leading to it was a low game total. But those are the things for me that really stand out is you need to make sure that the Jets don't have their breakthrough on stealing possessions. And you need to, as he said, get an early stop just because the Bills in the first half against Miami averaged 7.5 yards per carry on 13 designed runs in the first half. In the second half, it was 3.38 yards. What switch flipped at halftime? Because it's not like you were getting blown out and they took their foot off the gas. So there was some progress in the second half of that game, and you forced those punts in the second half. How many can you get early? Because I think if you can get 1 or 2 early, man, then we can really see these pass rushers that we're talking about, all the talent that they have. Chop Robinson, right? He's been really quiet the first 3 weeks. Get a 2-score lead, get a 10-point lead and see what the pass rush looks like. I bet it looks a lot different.
Yeah, and if you're having troubles with the offensive line, the run game is a good way to fix them. Z, I want to get back to the defensive side of the ball for just a quick second with you. 97 points and 4 rushing touchdowns allowed this season, right? And that's something that when I look at what Kyle was just talking about with the running defense, the run defense for the Dolphins and how they were gashed against the Bills, it's been all season, all 3 games, right? I just said it, 97 points, 4 rushing touchdowns allowed. The Jets have a good offensive line. You got Breece Hall. What's the mindset on that defensive side of the ball going in against the run specifically on the defensive line? Because that's you, man. You're a DT. What are you guys talking about in that room?
Again, we always talk about we got to play proper technique and take care of our own business. Don't try to help somebody else out. I talked about it earlier about, now starting to press. We can't press. We got to continually stay home, play our gap, play our half a man, and clog up the holes and make sure we're not, letting old linemen off, so they can climb to the second level and that back can catch that crease and go a long way. That's their whole thing. Like we said, we gave up 97 points. But Grease, let me just make this comment to you. Baltimore's gave up 96.
Oof.
No one's talking about that, right?
They're talking.
I'm not trying to stick up for anybody, but I'm just saying it's just in perspective. The great Baltimore defense has given up 96 points this year. It shocked me when I read it today.
Wow. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up because people have a tendency to panic. And Kyle, you hear all this panic. You see it and hear it day in and day out. And people in the chat are loving the show. They're loving the combo. And you guys, specifically Z, they're loving you in there. But you hear this all the time, Kyle, and they're right to do it. I always think it comes down to personnel. I always think that the GMs who have been here and the personnel decisions that have been made have been awful. But you play with who you have and you coach who you have. Just if you would expand on Z's point a little bit about, the defensive performance so far and the way the fans are feeling about it, and with the Jets coming in, how they can get better.
No, I think everybody's expectations is first consecutive years with a defensive coordinator since, you tell me it was Josh Boyer, right? In the last year of Flores into the first year of Mike McDaniel, and they kept the scheme. So it's been 3 years since you've had the same defensive scheme in place. And I think everybody, and myself included, it was a talking point in the offseason, right? It's like, hey, there's continuity within the scheme. But if you don't have the continuity in the players, and the players don't have the offseason program together, I'm not particularly surprised that there is the space on the back end. And there's been some, there's been some execution stuff. Has there been maybe some hard lessons learned with this group of players about bringing pressure from depth and where they're coming from and the space that created? And Daniel Jones of the Colts killed you with hots, right? They had a pressure answer for every blitz that you brought. Daniel Jones knew exactly how to replace the pressure with the ball, and you were bringing pressure from off the line of scrimmage. So I think you've seen structurally in some pressure downs, like you've seen a little bit more willingness to get guys up in the line of scrimmage. And then in week 2, the Patriots catch you with the pick play and they get the back out of the backfield and the linebacker doesn't run over the top of it. So then you got to learn the lesson the hard way. So I'm not off the ball. I'm up on the line of scrimmage and the back goes out. I got to make sure I get up over the top of it. So it's like a moving target for objectives, but I think you're at least, I think, patching the holes on that side as you go and they get more reps. And I do expect that, again, we just talked about the numbers in the second half of the Bills game. First half to the second half was 2 totally different experiences for that defense. That's what the expectation's been. And, if Z can say it, I know Ricky Williams has said it, and he said it not that long ago. He said it on one of the local radio shows. First 4 weeks, you're figuring out who you are. Nobody likes that reality when you're 0-2. Nobody likes that reality when you're 0-3. But what do you do with it now that you're in week 4, right? And the joke in the comments has been, oh, the preseason's over. The 3rd week of the regular season's done. But I think there is some truth to now you're going to start to show us who you are because the guys have played well enough or played enough together to kind of have an understanding of what they're supposed to be doing and what the guys around them are capable of doing physically.
That's a great point, Kyle. And with that said, let's go around the horn real quick. We got a couple of minutes left. Z, we'll start with you. What are you expecting to see on Monday night? I am expecting to see, and I'll get to my prediction in a minute, but I'm expecting them to come out the same way they came out against the Bills, ready to play with that fire, with that passion. The thing that killed them there were the stupid mistakes, but you can't fault the effort and the energy from that Bills game. And I think they come out with that same, if not more, on Monday night this week.
Yeah, I see it the same way. They're going to keep building off of last week's game. I think there's some good tape for them to see, good and bad, to learn from and to improve on. So I think they're going to come out, again, with all the electricity of Monday night and all the hoopla and get off to a fast, good start. And, again, I think, there's going to be about time for those turnovers because once you get one, they come in numbers. And I think that, it'll start Monday night and it's going to turn.
Kyle, what do you think? I mean, we're in an era where 7 lost teams make the playoffs. I think there were 4 of them last year, maybe 5.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the Jim Moore thing. Playoffs? What are you talking? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game, right? So I do not expect the team to pack their bags. And I do not expect the team to come out flat just based off of the way that they performed hearing guys like Devon Achane, Malik Washington, Jalen Phillips talking to the press. I've kind of heard like, man, we're frustrated, but I haven't heard the other side of that coin. And the way that they played on Thursday gives me an indication that I think that's true. So I expect, whether it's 27-21 Miami or New York, I think Lee's on the button where I think this is going to be another one of those last possession of game decided kinds of scores. I don't think they're going to moonwalk over them because I do think the Jets pose some challenges. That offensive line, when it's been clicking, has been impressive, and they've got big backs. That Braylon Allen kid is a load, and he's going to force you to tackle him. So I think the Jets are going to have their opportunity to possess and move the ball. I don't think they're going to hit a bunch of explosives on you, but I think this is going to be a closely contested game. I expect the Dolphins to play inspired, and I would predict right now that the Dolphins are going to pull out a win.
Yeah, I'm going to go against Lee Sterling. I'm going to get there, but real quick, I'm going to take you through why. The Jets have a terrible defense. They give up 31 points a game. Their pass defense is abominable. They're picking up corners. It might be worse than Miami's at this point, guys, and that's saying a lot with 4 corners out, right? So the Jets are terrible in the secondary, especially at cornerback. I think Tua is going to pick them apart. Tyreek had a big game last week quietly, right? A couple of big plays on third down, 100-yard receiving game. He hasn't had a play over 30 years. We saw the viral clip this week. He hasn't had a play over 30 yards in a long time. So when I think about Tyreek and I think about Waddle and all those weapons, I like what Washington's doing. I love the running backs and Jalen Wright, kind of the forgotten guy now, right? But you have 3 guys in that room who can really contribute. So I think this is the week they get better. I think the stupid mistakes go away. I think they get that first dub, and I think they do it easily. I'm going to go against Lee. I'm going Dolphins and the over, and I'm going Dolphins by a wide margin. This game's not going to be close. They're going to get a lot better very quickly on Monday night. Now, that I don't want anybody to think that's going to be fool's gold, right? It doesn't mean they're better. It just means the Jets are terrible, and I think the Dolphins are much better than the Jets. I don't know how much better they are than any other team, but Kyle, you've been talking about it a lot. The schedule gets a little bit, at least from what we can see, it looks a little friendlier, a little easier moving forward, but I'm going to go Dolphins winning big on Monday night. And before we get out of here, guys, I just want to get a final thought from each of you before we wrap it up. And I think this will be cool. So I guess Z, we'll start with you. Just a final thought, anything you want to say to our audience. I'm going to give you the full stage and the full floor, brother.
Just hang in there. I mean, it's a young team on defense, and, we just got to, stay behind them. And again, at some point it's going to click, and we're going to start playing some really good football out there. I mean, just don't give up on us on the Dolphins yet.
All right. And Kyle, how about you, bud?
I think the thing that I would say to everybody going into week 4 is kind of embrace the process behind it. And to Z's point, I think there are players that they do have young players on this roster now. They do have new players on this roster now. And one of the things that I try to do in my program every week is explore for problems and solutions. And you want to find more players as the season goes you feel like can be a part of the solution on a week-over-week basis, but also whatever this team looks like beyond the 2025 season with a disappointing start, you want to feel like you've got a group of players that can provide answers to what you need to be a successful team and to fulfill the expectations that we as a collective fan base have for Miami.
It's been tough so far this year, man. And thank you guys both. Appreciate you being here and appreciate all of you here. My final thought, and I'm just going to leave the 3-shot up for mine because no one wants to see this big bald head by itself in the middle of the screen. But I'll say this about the Miami Dolphins. They are much, much better than their record. I think defensively, you take away a couple of key penalties, and I know you can't do that. Oh, come on, Grease, don't go there. But seriously, just take away the Zach Sealer penalty. What happens in that game? Take away the kick return right after the punt return against New England. What happens in that game, right? They're so close these last 2 weeks, which to me, coming out prepared, coming out with that intensity, that's good coaching. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Stop picking on Mike McDaniel. That's good coaching. They've been ready to play. They've made some stupid mistakes, but that's not his fault. They've been ready these last couple of games. And with the limitations they've had, I think this is the week that the Dolphins make a statement to the entire country. And that statement is, we are not as bad as you all think we are. And that's the only thing they can hope for right now is that little bit of improvement one week at a time. Well, guys, really appreciate you. Much better show this time. We're going to keep getting better every week. The comments have been real positive on the live YouTube version. Don't forget, right after this, if you're listening on audio, you already got this, but we upload, you download. Right after the show from YouTube, we upload to Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, anywhere you get your audio version of your podcast. And then, of course, after that, it's a big week, and it's all free it's at Roku as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun week in and week out. We're going to be here Monday night right after the Jets game. It's going to be real late, but hopefully the sweet taste of victory will make you forget about that Monday morning alarm clock. This has been Dolphins Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Z, for Kyle, for everybody at the Locked On Podcast Network. Jim Grieshaber, call me Grease. Thank you for being here and watching. We are out, and we will see you Monday night.